Carl Jung was the most celebrated psychiatrist in Europe, Freud's chosen heir, the man who would lead psychoanalysis into the future. And then, in 1913, he deliberately walked into madness. For 6 years, Jung descended into visions so terrifying, so bizarre, that he questioned his own sanity daily. He saw rivers of blood flooding Europe, corpses piling up to the mountains. He heard voices. He talked to figures that weren't there. His colleagues thought he was finished. His reputation crumbled. But here's what nobody expected. From that darkness emerged the most profound map of the human psyche ever created. The shadow, the archetypes, the collective unconscious, everything that makes Jungian psychology revolutionary today, came from those 6 years of controlled insanity. What did Jung find in that abyss? And more importantly, what part of yourself are you refusing to meet? The breaking point. It started with a friendship that turned into war. Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud had been inseparable. Freud saw Jung as his intellectual son, the man who would carry psychoanalysis to the world. Jung saw Freud as a father figure, a genius who had unlocked the secrets of the mind. But by 1912, cracks appeared. Jung began questioning Freud's obsession with sexuality as the root of all psychological problems. He saw something deeper, something Freud refused to acknowledge. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When Jung published his own theories, Freud was devastated. He called Jung a traitor. Their letters grew cold, then hostile, then silent. In January 1913, Freud severed all contact. Jung was alone. And that's when the visions began. Dreams of catastrophic floods, blood covering the Alps, dead bodies everywhere. Jung didn't know it yet, but these weren't symptoms of madness. They were prophecies. But what comes next changed everything about how we understand the human mind. Descent into chaos. World War I erupted in 1914, and Jung realized his visions hadn't been madness at all. They had been premonitions. Rivers of blood did flood Europe. Mountains of corpses did pile up. But this confirmation didn't bring relief. Instead, it opened a door Jung couldn't close. Every night he sat in his study and deliberately induced visions. He called it active imagination. Others might call it dangerous. He would let his mind fall into the darkness and see what emerged. Figures appeared. An old man named Fileman who spoke wisdom Jung didn't possess. A woman called Salome who represented something forbidden. A serpent. A dark shadow that wore his own face. Jung recorded everything in a private journal, writing in elaborate calligraphy, painting the images he saw. This would later become the Red Book, his most mysterious work. His wife Emma watched with concern. His patients noticed he was different, but Jung kept descending, because he understood something crucial. The only way out was through, and what he found at the bottom would revolutionize psychology forever. Meeting the shadow. In the depths of his psychological exploration, Jung encountered something that terrified him. A dark figure that moved like smoke and spoke with his voice. This wasn't a demon from outside. It was a demon from within. Jung called it the shadow. And here's what makes this discovery so unsettling. You have one too. Everyone carries a shadow. And the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Your shadow contains everything you've rejected about yourself. The anger you pretend you don't feel. The desires you're ashamed of. The parts of you that don't fit the image you present to the world. Most people spend their entire lives running from their shadow. They project it onto others, hating in others what they can't accept in themselves. But Jung discovered something revolutionary. Integration. The shadow isn't meant to be destroyed. It's meant to be integrated. Those dark impulses contain energy, creativity, and power that you've been denying yourself. The person who refuses to meet their shadow becomes their shadow's puppet. Control what you deny. But the shadow was just the beginning of what Jung found in that inner darkness. The archetypes. As Jung went deeper, he noticed something strange. The figures he encountered weren't random. They followed patterns. The wise old man, the great mother, the trickster, the hero. The same characters that appeared in myths from every culture across history. Ancient Greeks had them. So did the Egyptians, the Norse, the Chinese. Jung realized he hadn't invented these figures. He had discovered them. They existed in what he called the collective unconscious, a layer of the psyche shared by all humanity. Think about it. Why do stories from completely isolated cultures share the same basic characters? Why does every mythology have a flood story, a hero's journey, a battle between light and darkness? Because these patterns are hardwired into the human psyche. The archetypes aren't just interesting psychological theory. They explain why certain stories grip us, why certain symbols move us, why we're drawn to certain types of people. As Jung wrote, the collective unconscious contains the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution, born anew in the brain structure of every individual. But there was one archetype that fascinated Jung more than any other, and it would become the key to his entire psychological system: the self. Beyond the shadow, beyond the archetypes, Jung discovered something at the very center of the psyche. He called it the self with a capital S. Not your ego, not your personality, something far greater. The self is the archetype of wholeness. It's the total potential of who you could become if you integrated all the scattered pieces of your psyche, your true complete nature. Most people live their entire lives identified with their ego, the mask they present to the world. They think that's who they are. But the ego is just a small island floating on an ocean of unconscious depths. Jung saw the self appear in his visions as a mandala, those circular geometric patterns found in every spiritual tradition. He became obsessed with drawing them. Hundreds of mandalas, each one different, each one pointing toward the same center. The mandala is an archetypal image whose occurrence is attested throughout the ages. It signifies the wholeness of the self. The purpose of life, Jung realized, wasn't happiness. It wasn't success. It was becoming who you truly are. Individuation. That's what Jung called this process. And it would become the most important concept in his psychology. But what does individuation actually look like in practice? That's where things get uncomfortable. The price of truth. Let's be honest about what Jung's breakdown cost him. For 6 years, from 1913 to 1919, he was professionally destroyed. Colleagues who once respected him now whispered that he'd gone mad. Freud actively worked to discredit him. Medical journals stopped publishing his work. Students left his practice. He sacrificed his reputation for an inner truth he couldn't deny. Jung could have chosen safety. He could have reconciled with Freud, admitted he was wrong, returned to the fold. But something inside him refused. He had seen too much. He knew there was more to the human psyche than Freud's sexual theory allowed, so he paid the price. His income collapsed. His social standing evaporated. His mental health teetered on the edge. Some days he wasn't sure he would survive. But here's what Jung understood that most people don't. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Truth has a cost. Authenticity has a price. The person you could become lies on the other side of what you're afraid to face. No transformation without sacrifice. And Jung was about to emerge from his darkness with gifts that would change psychology forever. Emergence. In 1919, Jung stopped his active imagination exercises. The visions had served their purpose. He had mapped territories of the psyche that no one had explored before, and now it was time to share what he'd found. The years that followed were extraordinarily productive. Jung developed analytical psychology as a distinct approach from Freud's psychoanalysis. He wrote about psychological types, introducing concepts like introversion and extroversion that are now part of everyday language. He explored synchronicity, the meaningful coincidences that seem to connect inner and outer reality. He studied alchemy, not as primitive chemistry, but as a symbolic map of psychological transformation. What emerged wasn't just theory. It was a practical path for anyone who wanted to undertake the journey Jung had survived. A map for transformation. As Jung later wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." He had entered the darkness as a broken man questioning his sanity. He emerged as one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. But here's the question Jung would want you to ask yourself. Your shadow waits. You're not Carl Jung. You don't need to spend 6 years in active imagination, but you do have a shadow, and it's been running parts of your life without your permission. Think about the people who irritate you most. What qualities do they have that you can't stand? There's a good chance those are your own rejected qualities staring back at you. That's projection. That's your shadow using other people as a mirror. Think about the recurring patterns in your life. The same type of relationship that keeps failing. The same kind of opportunity you keep sabotaging. The same feelings you keep suppressing until they explode. Your shadow is the pattern you refuse to see. Jung's gift to us isn't just intellectual understanding. It's a practical path. You can meet your shadow through dreams, through journaling, through honest reflection on your triggers and reactions. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Choose awareness or fate. The question isn't whether you have a shadow. The question is whether you'll have the courage to meet it. But there's one final lesson from Jung's breakdown that might be the most important of all. Creative madness. Here's what most people miss about Jung's breakdown. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a disease that struck him randomly. Jung chose it. He deliberately opened the door to the unconscious, knowing it might destroy him. Why? Because he understood something profound about creativity and transformation. Breakthrough. Every genuine breakthrough requires a breakdown of the old structure. Every transformation requires a death of what you were before. The caterpillar doesn't slightly modify itself into a butterfly. It dissolves completely into chaos before reforming. Jung's breakdown was a creative act, the most courageous creative act in the history of psychology. He trusted that if he went deep enough into the darkness, he would find something valuable. And he was right. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Pain is the doorway. The parts of your life that feel like they are falling apart might be exactly what needs to happen. The confusion might be the beginning of clarity. The darkness might contain the light you've been searching for. And this brings us to the ultimate wisdom Jung extracted from his 6-year descent. The gift of wounds. Carl Jung lived until 1961, dying at 85 years old. In his final decades, he was recognized as one of the greatest minds of his era. His concepts have penetrated every corner of modern culture, from therapy to film to corporate personality tests. But Jung never forgot where his wisdom came from. It came from the wound. It came from the breakdown. The very thing that nearly destroyed him became his greatest gift to humanity. This is the archetype of the wounded healer, the person who transforms their suffering into medicine for others. The pain that doesn't kill you doesn't just make you stronger. It makes you wiser. It makes you capable of helping others navigate the same darkness. The word happiness would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. Jung's message to us across time is simple. Don't run from your darkness. Don't medicate it away. Don't distract yourself until you die. Your darkness contains your gold. Your wound contains your gift. The breakdown might be the breakthrough you've been waiting for. Your wound is your wisdom. The only question is whether you'll have the courage to descend. Carl Jung descended into madness for 6 years. He lost his reputation, his mentor, his certainty about reality itself. And from that abyss, he brought back a map of the human soul that has guided millions toward wholeness. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. The shadow you're avoiding doesn't go away because you ignore it. It grows stronger in the darkness. The archetypes that shape your life don't stop working because you don't believe in them. They keep pulling the strings you can't see. The unconscious is running the show whether you acknowledge it or not. But here's the gift Jung gave us. Awareness is freedom. The moment you turn to face what you've been running from, it begins to lose its power over you. You don't need 6 years in active imagination. You need the courage to ask, what am I refusing to see? What part of myself have I rejected? What would I become if I stopped running? Face the shadow, become whole. The descent awaits. The gold is in the darkness, and the person you could become is waiting to be discovered. If this unlocks something in you, subscribe for more. The vault has deeper wisdom waiting.